to encourage other legislators to follow your lead on this as well. So thank you. So we're gonna shift. I know, I agree. We're gonna shift to a conversation. Yeah, for sure. With Steve Fox. And for those who joined us after we did the introduction, Steve is the Director of Government Relations for the Marijuana Policy Project based in DC and the key architect behind the Amendment 64 campaign in Colorado, which legalized, taxed, and regulated marijuana for adults just this past November. So I'll hand it over to Steve, and then we'll have a conversation about Oregon as well.
Great. All right. I want to just start by thanking Congressman Blumenauer again for being here. It's really great. I know working in DC, I've been lobbying for quite a long time in Congress and know that it's not easy to get members of Congress to speak about this issue. It's hard enough to get them to vote for it, but actually coming out and taking a lead is really, really big. There's a small handful of legislators in DC who have done that over the course of time, and Congressman Blumenauer really seems committed to moving the ball forward, and that's really great. I mean, we actually lost two of our longtime champions, Ron Paul and Barney Frank, retired at the same time, so they, for the past 15 years, have been the two leaders of marijuana policy in Washington. So there's now this opening for others to step up, and I'm really pleased that Congressman Blumenauer is going to be one of those people. And I want to thank Roy also for putting this together, and I'm really, really happy to be here, spending some time in Oregon. Nice to see Doug and Jim and others who I've worked with in the past, but it's great to be here. So I assume a lot of you are here because you actually think marijuana laws should be changed. There may be some who aren't, who are just wondering what marijuana is, and maybe I'll address that as well. But I'm assuming most of you are hoping that the laws change here a little bit. So I'm here to talk about Colorado and talk about how we actually made it so that every adult in Colorado now can use marijuana legally. Every adult in Colorado can grow marijuana themselves, at least up to 6 plants. And soon enough, every adult in Colorado will be able to go to a nice neighborhood store and buy marijuana. And it will be labeled and packaged, and they may not even be buying raw marijuana anymore, because if you go to Colorado, you see many people now, in a growing number, are just using little vape pens. So when they talk about smoke being dangerous, it's not like people are really smoking anymore. It's very quickly evolving so that people just have their vape pen and they walk around and they vape. So anyway, that's just a side point, but it's really interesting to see how things are evolving pretty quickly, and you'll see that happen. I mean, marijuana is evolving from something that people would grow as a plant and sell out of their home and so on, to something that's being grown in Colorado in 20, 30, 40,000 square foot facilities and being processed and packaged and so on. So it's amazing to see. So I thought I would talk about what we did in Colorado. And since this is about the path to regulation here, I will try to intersperse it with some advice about what you can do here. So I'm going to break it down into 6 categories, and I'll name them now and then try to tick through them, and if I forget one, you can try to remind me. But as I see it, there's really six things that need to be done, or 6 categories. What we have is cooperation, education, timing, drafting, organizing, and advertising. So let's start from the beginning with cooperation, and that's a big thing, especially in Oregon for many of you who have been active in marijuana policy reform for a long time. There are many different opinions out there about how the laws should change. I don't really need to go into it in detail, but you even saw here just the last election cycle. You had one group supporting one ballot initiative, you had another group supporting another ballot initiative, and a lot of money was put into 2 different initiatives. And one of those didn't even qualify in the end. So there was a lot of money there that was spent in an inefficient way. You also had one person drafting an initiative this way, another person drafting an initiative another way, and so on, whereas the final language might not have been optimal. I'll get into that later when we talk about drafting. But that's no knock on the specific language that ended up on the ballot. It's hard to say what optimal is, but if there's cooperation and you listen to as many voices as possible and are open to the idea that maybe your idea isn't the best idea, you end up with very good legislation. And on not just about drafting, it just has to do with getting on the same page and channeling your energy in the same direction. So for those of you who are going to be very involved moving forward, we want to help bring everyone together and let everyone have a voice and really learn from each other. But in the end, we would have to realize, and this is what happened in Colorado, that you need to move forward together. And that's what we did in Colorado. The Marijuana Policy Project, and perhaps I should have started by just introducing myself and tell a little more about the Marijuana Policy Project. But MPP, for those who don't know, is the nation's largest marijuana policy reform organization in terms of membership and staff and annual budget. It's the largest organization dedicated fully to changing marijuana laws. And we lobby Congress, we do state ballot initiatives, we do state lobbying as well, and have been responsible for many of the laws that have passed over the past decade, from Massachusetts decrim initiative to medical marijuana initiatives in Michigan and Arizona, passing legislation, medical marijuana in Rhode Island, Delaware. I'm sure I'm forgetting some as well, but obviously we were behind the Colorado initiative as well. So what we did in Colorado was work with folks on the ground, like Mason Tavert, who is the head of SAFER, Brian Vicente, who is the head of Sensible Colorado. Of course, these guys were both MPP grantees for a long time, so we had good relationships. But there were many other folks on the ground as well, some names that you might not know, like Rob Corey and Warren Edson and other people in the state who are extremely knowledgeable about the issue and have been working on it for a long time. And we made sure that as we were drafting the initiative, we sent it to them. I mean, there was a list of 30 or 40 people, and we got everyone's input. And eventually we had a coalition working on the initiative. So that's the general idea in terms of cooperation, and I would stress that. And you need to figure out a way to come together. I know Roy at some point, well, I don't want to let something out of the bag, but you know, the idea of forming like a round table, you know, and I'll get to timing later about 2014, 2016, which we can all talk about if you have opinions. But as we see it, you know, we're hoping 2016 is the way things go. So, you know, forming some sort of 2016 roundtable, all people who want to be part of this effort moving forward, and, you know, everyone shares their voice. So, I don't want to jump ahead on that. I'll come back to that. But that's just the cooperation thing, very important. Second is education, and I could talk about this for quite a while. I'll try to make it short. But what we did in Colorado, and we really think that it changed the dynamic, was embark on a public education campaign, which started back in 2005, at a time when really there wasn't much of a debate in the country about making marijuana legal. It was here and there. Obviously MPP supported it, Normal supported it, people talked about making marijuana legal, but all of the real energy in the country was focused on medical marijuana. But what we did in Colorado was launch this SAFER campaign, fully dedicated to talking about the fact that marijuana is less harmful than alcohol, and it makes no sense to punish people who want to use marijuana instead of alcohol, similar to what the congressman said. And I was glad that he said it, that he talked about 40 years ago being part of a hearing and hearing some compelling testimony about marijuana being less harmful than alcohol, and it convinced him that the laws should change. And that's what we were working on for years in Colorado, was forcing that debate. through Denver initiatives, getting enough signatures to put on the ballot so you could debate whether there should be no penalty under Denver city ordinances for marijuana possession. And you have that debate, whether you win or lose. We ended up winning somehow. But when we started that campaign, we didn't think we were going to win. But we wanted to put it on the ballot and start the conversation. We did the same thing in 2006 by putting a ballot initiative on the ballot statewide and just talked over and over again about marijuana being less harmful than alcohol. And it just really worked. And just getting that message out there over and over again. We did it through earned media, and that was strategic, just getting on the news as many times as possible the phrase, marijuana is less harmful than alcohol. And in probably about 3 years, there were more than 300 television news stories, and they all had that same message in it. And we were able to change the culture. I'm not saying it will be as easy to do here, but the same basic message is important. And you can do that by, and we did this during the campaign, handing out flyers, just having volunteers across the country, across the state at important events with these flyers. And the ones we made had a young woman on the flyer, and it said, some people prefer alcohol, but I prefer marijuana, and this is why. It's less harmful, I feel safer around marijuana users, that kind of thing. And then it had facts on the back, with facts like these, why should I be punished for using marijuana instead of alcohol? And then it just gave CDC statistics and so on. The evidence is very compelling, and it's all out there, and most of you probably know that. But what I'm emphasizing is the need to spread that message. So that's the education side, and it's really important. I don't want to talk too much about Washington and Colorado, but I would say that we had an advantage in Colorado over Washington because we did that for a long time. And while we both ended up with about 55% of the vote, I think a case can be made based on the demographics of the state, the amount of money that was spent, the level of opposition that there was. In Colorado, we had the current popular governor and the past two governors before him all coming out against us with radio ads, and the mayor of Denver came out against us, and the Colorado Teachers Union came out against us, and we had pretty strong opposition. But despite that, we had spent enough time helping people understand that marijuana isn't as scary as elected officials and others might think, that we were able to get the same percentage as Washington, which spent more money and really had no opposition whatsoever, except a little opposition from within the movement of people who were upset about their driving penalties that they put into their initiative, which I'll get to again during our drafting discussion. So that was the education side of things, and that's really important. Next issue is timing, which I alluded to before. Very important. What we've seen since 2000, that if you do a ballot initiative related to marijuana on a presidential election year ballot, as opposed to a midterm, which would be the even year in between the midterm election, the difference is stark. Since 2000, if you look at only well-funded marijuana-related initiatives, I hope I have the numbers exactly right, but in presidential election years, the average percent yes is 58%. If you do it at the midterm, the average percent yes is about 46%. And that's only looking at initiatives that were somewhat well-funded. Like I'm not counting SAFER's initiative in 2006 that was done for earned media, but with no money and got 41% of the vote. And that was during an off-year election, but I'm not even counting that. I'm only counting things like Prop 19, MPP's initiatives in Nevada in 2002, 2006, even including MPP's Arizona initiative in 2010, which we managed to win with 50.13% of the vote. But that's actually the only victory since 2000 in an off-year election. It's really hard. So because of the demographics during a presidential election year, you get a bump. I used to think the bump was around 3 to 4%, but it seems like the bump might be more like 7 or 8%. So it's a huge difference if you're trying to win an election, you know, having an extra 7 or 8 points in hand is just huge. So, as I said, for that reason, first and foremost, we think 2016 is a better idea. It's clearly why we did 2012 in Colorado. We wouldn't have done 2010 if we lost this year. I mean, well, last year now. If we lost in 2012, we would have done 2016. We wouldn't have said, oh, well, we almost had it, let's do 2014. We just wouldn't have done it. Even if we, you know, pointed to Washington and said, well, look, they did it, there's momentum, we just wouldn't. And just a word of caution also for those thinking about 2014 is you just don't know what the landscape will look like in 2014 at this point. You may think, well, we can live. We don't even need those 7 or 8 points because support is so strong. We can get 51%, but you just don't know. You don't know if there'll be negative news coming out of Washington for whatever reason. They're going to be getting their system up and running. You don't know that that's going to be a smooth process. There could be some bumps in the road. Hopefully those bumps will be worked out by 2016, and that won't matter. But again, if there are still bumps, you want to have those extra 7 or 8 points from 2016. So my basic advice there is 2016 is the way to go, but I'll certainly entertain questions afterwards. My next point was about drafting, and the drafting is really important in many different ways. As we see just with Colorado and Washington, you make important decisions along the way, and they affect many people's lives depending on the decisions you make. Whether to include driving penalties or not, whether to include home cultivation or not, whether to allow localities to ban establishments, which is what we actually did in Colorado. Just to talk about that one issue, it was our opinion that there would be some people in some parts of the state that may say, okay, well, this seems okay, I mean, the state might as well get the tax revenue, but I really don't want them opening in my community. And that would be more likely to be the sentiment in communities in Colorado where they've already banned medical marijuana facilities. You know the difference. I mean, there are different communities in Colorado right now. There are communities where there is medical marijuana, and there are communities where there isn't. So for those who are living in the non-medical marijuana communities, that's an important point. And we just have to respect that and understand that over time, there will be fewer areas where they don't have establishments. It just won't make sense. I mean, you still have Aurora, Colorado, just outside of Denver. They've banned medical marijuana centers there. And what's happening there is all the patients drive to the edge of Denver, spend their money, the tax revenue goes to Denver, and then they drive back to Aurora. And that will be 4 times greater once it's not just medical marijuana patients and it's all adults. And they'll just have to decide whether they want to only have liquor stores or whether they can accept the fact that they could actually sell something less harmful and generate tax revenue and so on. And eventually they'll just do it because they're losing too much money by not doing it. So there's no need to force people into doing something they don't want to do. One thing we did do in the initiative was put in a provision that said you can ban it through your elected body, whatever that is, city council, county commission, and so on. But if you're going to put it on the ballot and try to chicken out in that way, it has to be during a general election during an even-numbered year. To make it at least, you know, we almost went so extreme to say it has to be during a presidential election, but there was a little pushback. Again, this is the whole idea of drafting. You might want to do something, and then someone tells you, well, the municipal league will be really upset about that and will come out against you if you do that. So then you say, okay, well, maybe we shouldn't go that far, we'll just do it during a general election and so on. But we can prevent what happened in Fort Collins, Colorado, which has actually now been reversed. But in 2011, in a year when very few people vote, they put an initiative on the ballot and banned all of their dispensaries, which definitely hurt, and it wasn't really fair because, when you have such a small turnout, it isn't really a reflection of of the community, it's a reflection of the 20% of people who vote during an off-year election. But that point I make about the municipal league is important, and I don't want to dwell on it too much, but all of these drafting issues, ultimately someone has to have final say, but you hope that it's a very collaborative process and everyone's opinion is listened to, and you figure out the best way to go. And also, sometimes you just have to go with your gut in some ways. I know when we were drafting our initiative, the polling firm that was working with us at the time said, if you include home cultivation, it could be fatal. And we just decided that we would do it anyway. Part of the reason is we didn't want to make it so that people had to go buy it from somewhere. I mean, people should just be able to grow it themselves. That's the most fundamental part. But also, our initiative had all kinds of safety valves in it. We actually wrote it so that licensing takes place at the state level. If the state fails to act for any reason, then localities can license on their own. And then if localities fail to license, then people can grow themselves. So there was always like a safety valve there. We wanted to make sure that this didn't get stymied. And I happen to feel like the fact that we did that has probably influenced the thinking on the federal level. If we had two initiatives that were exactly like Washington, where the only way people could get marijuana legally is through state licensed establishments, they might have felt like, well, we can just shut this whole thing down. But we would have been able to say, and we did say, if you do that in Colorado, it will just be a growing festival, and people will be growing everywhere, and let's see what you can do about it. And no community in Colorado wants that. You know, ultimately, the communities in Colorado would prefer to have most growing done through an industrial system or a commercial system. So that all kinds of things could be said about the drafting. I guess I'll leave it at that for now. But you know, just know that not everyone is going to be happy. But in the end, you'll be in a better place, and the changes you may want will come further down the line. You know, we know 1 ounce of possession is really somewhat limited, and some people got mad during the campaign saying that's not really like alcohol, because you can buy as much alcohol as you want. But we just set that floor in the Constitution and just said 1 ounce is legal. We didn't say anything more than an ounce is illegal. We just said we're starting off with 1 ounce being legal, and then the legislature in the future can make 2 ounces legal or 10 ounces legal, or you know, whatever it becomes over time. You know, again, eventually, once the system is set up, you know, the businesses that exist, you know, might want to sell more than an ounce to some people, so they can take care of lobbying and trying to convince legislators that 1 ounce is too little. But you know, we just take things slow and move forward in that direction. And I guess the other part is the constitutional amendment, which I believe the Congressman mentioned before. That was another decision we had to make, whether to do it through the Constitution or just as a statutory initiative. And we just decided, in Colorado, it was a consideration that we didn't trust the legislature at all. And I think for good reason. One side note is that the legislature or legislative committee ends up putting out something called the Blue Book to all voters in Colorado. And it's a long process where the staff puts together arguments for, arguments against. You get to have some feedback there. They describe the initiative and so on. But the real meat of the guide are the arguments for and against. So we went through that process, and finally the committee of legislators got to see them and take their final vote on it. And they just decided to take out 3 of the arguments in favor, which included the fact that marijuana is actually less harmful than alcohol and tobacco. They took that out of the arguments, along with a couple other sentences, and made it so that there were 336 words against it and only 208 words in favor of it. And we tried to sue them to get that rectified, but we lost. So the point is that we don't trust the legislature in Colorado. We'll have to assess in Oregon whether they can be trusted more. But it also depends. Each state has its own laws about how much you can change an initiative after it passes, and I admit know what the standard here is, but that's something that you would look at in the drafting process and say, can we do a statutory initiative, or do we need to do an amendment so it's harder to change? All right, so that was the fourth point. The next one was organization, or actually organizing. So you just need time, and you want to organize on the grassroots level. That's what I'm talking about, organizing at the grassroots level, organizing at the grass tops level, trying to get community leaders and others on your side. And it's a long process. It's something that should start today, basically. And you just got to get out there and start talking to people and find the people who are on your side and have them join. You know, people should be talking to members of the clergy and so on, or doctors, anyone you can get to say that they support this. Because eventually, like we did in Colorado, is we were able to have an event where we announced that 300 doctors supported the amendment, which is great to be able to say. I mean, we had the benefit of having some money, so we were able to do a mailing to all doctors in the state, and they were able to send back their letters of support. But if you start now and find a dozen supportive doctors, you could send a letter with a dozen supportive doctors on it to all the doctors in the state, and that just makes them more comfortable to sign on, and it just builds on itself. So there's all kinds of grass tops activity, and then grassroots organizing as well. And as I said, that feeds into the education side, where you just want people around the state with these flyers out there talking to people, talking about the fact that marijuana is less harmful than alcohol. Let me say, I emphasize that message as an education message, but in the end, in the last 2 months of the campaign, you actually pivot to more traditional messages. And I guess I am getting to that because my sixth point is advertising, so I'll combine that there. But on the organization side, you do want to get people out there and talking to friends and family and members of their community and so on. And the organizing obviously happens online as well. And that's something I would also emphasize. One thing I'm really proud of in our Colorado campaign is that we're able to build up a strong list. I think maybe a email list about 25,000 people, I think, ultimately, with probably 15 to 20,000 of those in-state, which is obviously the most important part. And what we did, I would say basically every email that went out was a reminder to talk to friends and families about the issue. Because research has shown, and it's almost common sense, that the most influential conversation someone can have about this is from a family member. I mean, we would specify talk to your grandparents, your parents, your aunts and uncles. It was obviously trying to tell young people to talk to older people. Obviously, it can work at every level, but that was the one we really focused on. And just helping them understand, because they don't. I mean, a lot of people, especially 65 and older, who don't support this issue very strongly, they pretty much, many of them think marijuana is similar to heroin, and they don't see much of a difference. And getting them to understand that, you know, the younger generations, especially the youngest generation at this point, meaning people who are 18 to 34, not that we're talking about use under 21, but it's a fact of life. You know, parents know that their kids drink at college, and it's accepted. So it should equally be accepted for kids to come home and say, you know what, I find that the drinking is really a little out of control. I just prefer to use marijuana. It's less harmful. I'm not hungover. I'm able to do work, schoolwork better the next day. Again, I'm not advocating this. I'm saying this is a fact of life, and that's a conversation that young people should be able to have with their parents and grandparents. And it's not that they're trumpeting it. It's just helping them understand that marijuana is less harmful than alcohol, and adults shouldn't be punished for using the less harmful substance. So what I was proud of is that there was some post-election polling done, and it showed that up in Washington State, people were asked, did you hear anything positive about the initiative during the campaign? And then specifically, where did you hear that? And most often it was advertising, radio, television, whatever it is, more television, Washington, of course. But 5% of voters in Washington said that they heard something positive from friends and family, which is 1 out of every 20 voters. But in Colorado, it was 12%, which is 1 out of every 8 voters heard something positive about the initiative from friends and family, which is a pretty significant number. So that's something that you're going to want to push all along the way. So then my final point is the advertising, and there are 2 sides to the advertising. Obviously, it depends how much money you have, and you want to have a good amount of money. So that's going to be a question of, what the funders, if funders are convinced, like MPP, that things look like they're going well in the state, is it worth supporting, how does the polling look, and so on. But I have a feeling 2016 is going to look good. So groups like MPP and DPA and others will be looking to help out. So hopefully there will be a healthy advertising budget if things move forward. But then there's also the messaging side of the advertising, and that's when things change, where for a while you spend a lot of time helping people understand that marijuana is less harmful than alcohol, it's not that scary, and then at the end you have more traditional messages, which you all have heard, which is law enforcement should focus on more serious crimes, and that we should just generate tax revenue from this and have profits go to regulated businesses instead of drug cartels. And that's what we did in Colorado. We think the ads were really effective. We sprinkled it in. We had some other ads out there. We had conservative former Congressman Tom Tancredo do radio ads for us that we put on conservative talk radio. We spent a good amount of money on that, and I think it was probably money well spent, where he was talking about should be a small government issue. We shouldn't be wasting all this money on a program that is just steering money to Mexican drug cartels. And we had Melissa Etheridge do an ad that we put on adult contemporary radio. We did a Spanish language ad that was on Spanish language stations around the state. And then we also had what I was really proud about, or really was happy that we did, was had an ad that focused on PTSD. I know PTSD is an issue here, and people are hoping to add it to the list of qualifying conditions in the state. And we have been trying to do that in Colorado for a long time as well. So what we ended up doing, which was entirely appropriate, was putting an ad on stations around the state with a veteran saying, I had PTSD when I came back from Iraq. Marijuana calmed me down, it helped me. And then it was just saying at the end, please vote for Amendment 64 so that other vets don't have to suffer. And it was making the point, and we had words interspersed between what he was saying that medical marijuana or PTSD isn't a qualifying condition for medical marijuana, and that if Amendment 64 passed, anyone with PTSD could use marijuana legally. So that's where we are, and that's actually what I said on election night when I got to say a few remarks. I was most pleased for that, because at this point in Colorado, any veteran with PTSD can use marijuana legally, and that's it, and their lives are better because of it. And not to mention so many other patients with many other conditions, but that one's especially important. So I think that's the whole kit and caboodle. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I'm going to ask a quick question to get us started, and then we're going to go around the room in some sort of polite fashion. I'll point out people. My first question, as sort of experience from Measure 80, we did, the Measure 80 campaign did well in urban areas, obviously the city of Portland and Multnomah County, Lane County, and Eugene, but fared poorly in rural areas. And Colorado demographically and geographically is similar to Oregon in that way. How did you do in the rural areas, and how do you feel that you got there?
When you say, how do we feel that we got there? I'm not sure that it was our area's strongest support. So I'm not sure.
Well,
I mean, obviously we did talk about hemp as much as possible.
So your resources were focused on Colorado has more large metro areas than Oregon does. We really have one major metro area, but so you're focusing on similar urban counties.
Yeah. I mean, we had advertising throughout the state, and hopefully the general messages resonate throughout the state and brought support in some of those counties. I mean, we didn't do really poorly anywhere. I mean, our poor counties in terms of performance were probably still in the low to mid 40s. So it really wasn't too bad. But one thing I would mention is that we actually won in El Paso County, which is a very conservative county that houses Colorado Springs. We won by 10 votes there, and I really do think that that the marijuana is safer than alcohol message even helped down there and helped people realize that, you know, they may feel like it's not right morally, but in a society where alcohol is legal, maybe it doesn't make sense to have marijuana be illegal.
Jennifer, and then Russ, and then we'll come over here.
We were able to generate a lot of press this year by getting involved in the Attorney General race and the Bureau of Labor and Industries race. Since we're not talking about really doing an initiative in the off-presidential year, do you think it would be really helpful to get involved in representative races, especially against folks like Sal Escobar and Andy Olson and other real strong opponents of medical marijuana, and make marijuana an issue in their campaigns? We seem to have a real strong effect in the Attorney General's race by getting involved in the little comment sections. Even though we didn't have money for advertising, we were able to shut down all press on that race, because every time they wrote an article about him, we'd get in there and get marijuana education out, and he'd drop 3-5 points in the polls. So how do you feel about maybe getting some national support for folks to run against some of our more virulent opponents for representative?
Yeah.
Or is that just too new of an approach? Nobody's ever thought of it before.
Well, it's certainly not something no one's thought of before. I mean, certainly you have organizations with PACs trying to support people and so on. And you always want to try to, you know, have an opponent lose. There's benefit there. It's a big endeavor though, and you know, once you get into a race, you realize that there are probably going to be a lot more issues that come up and so on. I mean, I'm not dismissing it in any way, and what happened in the AG's race was great, and if there are opportunities, I would take advantage. But in terms of that kind of political activism and helping our cause between now and 2016, I would suggest that anyone, like young or old, volunteer for campaigns. You know, spend some time and just work with someone running for office at any level of government. You know, the lower the level of government, the more influence you can have and the more you can be known and respected and trusted. And then when we need someone to endorse the initiative in 2016, you could have a friend there who would be willing to do it.
We'll do Russ, and then front, and then we'll go from there.
All right, I just want to say I agree 100% with 84% of your points. The point on timing, I wanted to ask a few questions with. I agree that 2016 is an absolute slam dunk, but I don't see that 2014 is not a layup. And the reason why is that, I mean, you quote some of the statistics of how the midterm elections have gone in the past, but that was before 2 states had legalized marijuana. And we are right next to Vancouver, and we're going to see a flow of money going across the border to Vancouver. Our Oregonians already called out the legislature to do something about this, so there's a lot of pressure right now. I'm kind of, there's a part of me that says, you know, strike while the iron is hot in this case, that the previous midterms don't necessarily tell us what we're going to see in the next midterm now that this issue is popular and getting talked about a lot. And in passing, you mentioned MPP's 2006 effort in Colorado, which earned a lot of media, you said, and gave a lot of education. And yet when I saw the memo from Rob Campia, I saw what I interpreted to be a veiled threat that if anyone did anything in 2014, MPP was going to bail on Oregon for 2016. So can you, I mean, make me feel, I don't care either way. I just want to support all of Oregon got behind something and passed it. So if that's a roadblock, this 2014 stuff I bring up, how can we get past that?
Okay, which part of that? I don't, in terms of the veiled threat, I would just want to address that because I think what Rob was probably saying, that's Rob Campia, MPP's executive director, is not necessarily that MPP will bail. I mean, who knows what will happen, but we've been in this situation before, and I'll address the difference that might exist because Washington and Colorado passed. But we've been in this situation before where in 2009, we were trying to encourage there to not be an initiative in California in 2010. And the point was, you think you might win, but you might not win, and if you lose, it's going to be nearly impossible to encourage funding to come to California because you will have just come off a loss, and it just might not be there. And you know what Rob might be suggesting is that it will make it very hard to raise money if you do 2014. And perhaps for him, you know, he may even know that he works with the fundraising and I don't. So he may even have a better sense that coming off a loss really makes it nearly impossible. And if there are other states he needs to raise money for, it just wouldn't be at the top of the priority list. So, I mean, I guess that's part of it. But in terms of the momentum, I mean, I've said this earlier, but I don't think I said it here. I'm trying to remember. But the 7-point bump, did I mention the 7-point bump? And the likelihood of not knowing what's going to be happening in Washington, whether there will be diversion issues or anything like that, you just don't know. I mean, you might feel its momentum now, but it might be coming in the other direction in 2014. You just don't know. I would never say that winning in 2014 is impossible. It might be possible, but you're going to have to invest a lot of money and then not know. You might, or not you personally, but people in Oregon might say, well, we did a poll today, and it says we have 58 support, so I think we're going to be all right. And then you spend X hundreds of thousands of dollars on a signature drive, and you get it on the ballot, and then all of a sudden all the newspaper reports are negative stories about how Washington's initiative is being implemented, and then all of a sudden you drop to like 53%, and then you get that the midterm election drop that occurs when people actually vote, because it's a more conservative electorate than what you got in your polling in February of 2013. So it all comes together, and then you might end up with a loss. And then, for what? You had a guarantee in 2016, and now you don't have 2016. So is it worth it? Do you want to like roll the dice? All that money to be spent on 2014 on a signature drive or anything else could all be put into public education that only increases your odds of winning in 2016. So if you want marijuana to be legal in Oregon in 2016, you can do it. And pretty much running an initiative in 2014 is the only thing that's going to mess it up.
Okay. We got a quick follow-up from Don, but this person's been waiting for a while, so if I could just go over here, then to Don, and Amanda, I see you, and John, and we'll go from there.
I'm Nathan Jimenez, also with Portland Radio Authority and a medical marijuana patient. I'm a profound believer that part of the reason why the legalization issue failed here in Oregon is because it was not sensibly written. And it's not just an issue of the urban-rural divide, because we see that Oregon truly is a purple state. It is an issue driven whether they will vote conservatively or whether they'll vote liberally in this state. I would say that to the credit of Oregonians, that we are sensible voters as it regards to policy. My concern is, because of the legalization of Washington, we have a situation that this could affect our economic competitiveness. Oregon's legislature was one of the first in the nation to pass and sign and by the governor to legalize hemp. I also do hemp merchant business here in Oregon. I'm also a jeweler as well. And we have something that is a matter of sustainability here in regards to hemp. This is something that we could create great industry and jobs. We have an 8% unemployment rate here in Oregon. We could bring that down through recycling and through hemp. Your guys' issue didn't even address hemp in Colorado, nor did they address it in Washington.
It actually made hemp legal.
Okay, well, that's good to know that it was in there, because the way it was written, it was so screwy, I'm surprised it passed at all. I know certainly something like that wouldn't pass in Oregon the way it was written. And of course, it didn't pass. And twice, the voters have rejected dispensaries here in Oregon. It seems to be the will of the people that the Oregon legislature take up the issue and cause reform. Obviously, we need medical marijuana reform. Patients like me and other people have problems with access. I think that probably New Mexico's greatest position, how they do it, where the government buys from the growers, the government gives to the patients, and then the government also sells to dispensaries for excess amounts. So, but we need a universal framework. We could raise a constitutional amendment, since we have 18 states, you know, that address medical marijuana. You guys, I'm concerned about you guys trying to, you say you've been involved in Delaware, you've been involved in Colorado. Well, the policies there and the positions there, those medical marijuana laws are screwy. They need reform.
All right, so let's give Steve a chance
So
to
what are you
respond
guys
to
going
that.
to do about that,
Here.
about reforming the system all around?
Don, do you want to jump into the same question, or regulated supply question?
Well, no, it's not regulated.
Okay, then why don't we let Steve respond if you want to, or we can go to Don real quick. We're running out of
it's
time.
like you're, referencing some states where it went through the legislative process, and that's often difficult. There are also initiatives along the way have been drafted in pretty much as many different ways as there are medical marijuana laws, and none of them are perfect in any sense, and that has to do with some political calculations that were made at times. Sometimes it seemed like people don't want dispensaries, now it seems like people do want dispensaries and they don't want home growing. It goes back and forth, but the arc of history is moving in the right direction, and we're trying to do as much as we can. Obviously, in Colorado, we have vastly improved the medical marijuana system by making it so that you don't even need a card anymore. So we're certainly moving in the right direction.
That doesn't sound good to me, because if you don't have a government and a card that's issued by the government, that doesn't sound like a better system.
I appreciate what you're saying, but we got about 10 minutes left, and I want to get as many questions as possible. We're going to Dawn, and then Amanda in the back, and we're going to come to this side for the back, and we'll see where we are from there.
The legislature has indicated their desire to take up a regulated supply system this year. And then they've also indicated a desire to refer to the people a legalization initiative with the 2014 general election. What would MPP's involvement be in either of those two processes?
Well, I guess, there's my feeling and there's our involvement. I mean, obviously we want to be involved in the state and move forward to 2016, and we're happy that Roy is working with us. In terms of a regulated system for medical marijuana, I think that would be great, and I hope they move forward with it. We saw in Colorado that they were able to do that and regulate the system, and it's worked very well. I'm not saying that is like the stepping stone to making it legal for all adults, but the point is it is a way of getting familiar with regulations. States do need to learn how to regulate the cultivation and distribution of marijuana, and Colorado is way ahead of every other state because they did that a few years ago, and now they're using the same model to expand it further. So I think that would be great, and I can't say what we would do. Like normally when MPP goes into a state and thinks that something is possible, it's a real investment of time and money and so on, and that we're looking to help with a ballot initiative here, and it's a world of limited resources, so I can't say that MPP would fund a lobbying effort to get the regulations through, because that's a whole nother ball of wax. But I certainly would be open to talking to everyone about it, and if there's anything we can do to support it, and strategically, if I can give any advice, I'd love to help. And with respect to the referral, I'm just skeptical it will actually happen, so I'm not sure how much time I should spend talking about it, at least in this cycle. I don't think they'll refer.
All right, we're low, so we got Amanda, and then a woman in the back, and then there was a hand in the middle if we've got time. And Steve will stick around for a few minutes after we adjourn and try and catch some more questions.
Thanks for coming out here to share Colorado's success. I wanted to speak as someone who worked on Prop 19 about timing, because I feel like Prop 19 ultimately ended up being a very expensive education campaign. And I feel in a lot of ways it opened the door for the wins in 2012, and it was not in California. The other thing about that is now California is really looking at 2016. So whereas it could have been maybe 2012, it's now 2016. And so 2014 in Oregon is crapshoot, whereas 2016 will be a win if we could do the numbers that we did with what we had to deal with in 2012. We can definitely win in 2016. And that allows for the long time frame that you mentioned, 7 years to do an education campaign in Colorado to have the success that you did. That means that all of the years leading up to 2016 will be needed to do that education campaign. So I just wanted to speak that. It's less of a question, but thank you again for coming out.
Thank you. In the back here.
My name is Jennifer Alexander, and prior to Roy working on the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act, I worked on the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act, and I believe I reached out to you guys early in the campaign, and we discussed funding and the divisiveness.
And cooperation.
Yeah, and so the thing that comes up for me is, hypothetically, let's say that everybody in this room agrees that we're going to wait until 2016 and we're not going to do anything so that we can get this help from MPP, because everybody in this room knows money has been really what's holding Oregon back. If we had been able to have the advertising, marketing, educational campaign, and all of these elements, I believe we probably could have won just this last election, but we had no chance to do any of that. How would you recommend that we find that cooperation so that nobody is putting that quote-unquote potentially losing effort in 2014 that throws the whole thing under? Because, I mean, even if we all agree, if just one person puts that 2014 campaign out there, you're saying that that means that we might not get MPP's help, or Campia is actually saying that, but that's what we're hearing. And to me, I'm all for waiting until 2016 if we have this sure thing with lots of help, and we're actually going to have the funding coming in, because I know how significant that funding would have been to winning. But if we're all putting it on hold with the hopes that MPP will help us, and MPP says, oh, you guys messed it up by doing this, we're where we've been this whole time with no funding.
I guess I mean, MPP is already committed to helping, and we're planning to have Roy working here over the next 2 years and plan to spend more after that. I guess it shouldn't be a question of MPP mind. Like the question it seems to be in Oregon is that there always seem to be some people who want to spend money to put an initiative on the ballot each cycle, and that money should be there. I mean, that's what I'm saying today. Like, the money that would be spent on a signature drive, which is significant, should just be, if you just invest a third of that into organizing over the next couple of years, that would fund a lot of organizing. It would fund people's jobs and so on. Instead of paying petitioners to run around the state collecting signatures, you'd be paying people to talk to people and educate people, and you could have a better website and things like that. I mean, that's the money is supposedly there. It's sort of a strange question in a way, because you're concerned about.
We spent less than $500,000 on the last 2 or 3 campaigns here, so I mean, the money isn't there. That's the problem.
Well, that's my point. You say less than 500,000. I'm saying take 250,000 and spend it on public education. So, when you're saying, like, well, what if we do 2014 and then MPP walks away, you're basing this on someone actually paying for a full signature drive. And I'm trying to say, if someone has enough money to pay for a full signature drive, let's all work together and put that money towards public education over the next couple of years. Like, I don't actually understand why anyone would put the money into a signature drive. That's just how I feel. I'm not sure where the logic is in it. What's that?
A lot of people join you in that field.
And that's not going to necessarily stop them from doing it.
Right.
Why spend $350 grand and put something on the ballot and you have no money to campaign for after you got on the ballot?
Right.
The point.
Well, yeah. I mean, the more people
Well,
that, and I'm not.
How do we prevent it?
Well, Jennifer, if I could jump in there as well, I think that there's, there seems to be sort of a common misperception, or just maybe a thinking error, where you say we're going to be on the 2016 ballot, and therefore we're going to be in suspended animation, cryogenically frozen for 3.5 years, and then jump out of the ice with a perfectly cooked and ready to go measure. I mean, there's an incredible amount of work that has to happen every single year between now and 2016, including activity at the legislature, including looking at regulated supply and looking at issues like PTSD as a condition, building support way outside of the 4 to 7 counties where Measure 80 was successful, and looking at around the state to building support and looking at bipartisan support. So, I mean, there's an amazing amount of work that we have to do for 2016 to be a slam dunk. And I would encourage everybody to be thinking about it not as now or 2016, but every single day between now and 2016, we have work cut out for us. And there's stuff for everyone to do. There's community engagement at every city and town in the state. People who drove up here from Klamath Falls and drove up here from Ashland and Medford, Grants Pass and Roseburg. So there's a tremendous amount of networking and organization building that we can do to make 2016 the slam dunk we all think it is going to be. But I want to make sure that we're not saying if we don't do 2014, then we're just sitting back and waiting for the check to hit in 2016, because that's not going to happen. Well, you had your hand up, and then the gentleman sitting next to Sam, and then we'll wrap it up and stick around for a few more minutes after that. Yeah. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, Sage, I've been waiting quite a long time.
Well, I really have a comment. That's what I really want to thank you, Steve. On November 6th, my prediction was that Washington was going to barely squeak out a victory, Colorado was going to come close and not make it, and Oregon was going to be down there in the low 40s. And I can't tell you how elated I was that Colorado won and saved us from a future of 502. So great work and great decisions. And I really look forward to working with MPP in the future as we go through these issues and figure out what are we going to do in 2014, what are we going to do in 2016. I put out one more idea why it's better to wait, and that's that if we wait, we can probably have bigger limits, a more open-ended law, a law we like better. On the other hand, if it comes down to it, a lot is changing, and I haven't given up hope on 2014. So let's see how this plays out. And my comment on that is that we have a flaw in this movement, is that we're always talking about the funders, and it's always somebody else. And I would say to you and everybody else in this movement that when we quit talking about other people as the funders and we all put in, then we can do an initiative every year, and if we don't happen to win, we'll just say, well, hey, we're just going to do it again and get right past that problem. But thank you for all you do, and thank you, MPP, for being there and making sure that not only can people that enjoy marijuana drive when they're not impaired, but that we can all do what ought to be our God-given right, and that's to grow the plant ourselves. So thank you.
Gentleman in the back, right there, and then Daniel. And then Daniel, and then we'll wrap it up.
My question is concerning the drafting and the things you mentioned in Colorado, that you're happy to be able to preserve people's right to grow personally at home, but then also allowing for these larger warehouse-style industrial production grows. I'm more familiar with the failed Prop 19 effort, and at least anecdotally, one thing I was hearing was that people were concerned, and part of the reason it failed is people were concerned that they weren't going to be able to do, what's now a gray market, just home commercial grows. So a lot of people who are natural supporters for legalization voted against it. Is there a place for small or mid-level, mid-scale home commercial grows and